fact that the reason I got started on this path, which was about 12 years ago when I was in my mid-50s, was that I was afraid of aging. I was terrified of, getting old.
Welcome to episode 24 of the Wendi Cooper Show, Speaking of Age, conversations with remarkable people over 50. This is excerpts from a July 12th Facebook Live conversation with author and activist Ashton Applewhite. Her book, This Chair Rocks, A Manifesto Against Ageism, is available on Amazon, Kindle, Audible, and Barnes & Noble. This episode touches on a few of the topics in her book, such as the meaning of the bull looks different, what it really feels like to be in your 80s, why wanting to act and look younger is a sign of self-loathing, and what we all can do to fight ageism in an obsessed society.
So I started to research longevity and interview people over 80 who worked. The catalyst for the whole project was realizing how much I thought I knew about what it would be like to be that old was way off base or flat out wrong. Either not nuanced enough or just that all you hear are the scare stories. And I realized pretty soon that the issue at the heart of this was ageism. I'm not an expert on age. Age is the biggest topic there is. It is how we move from birth to death. But I am an expert on stereotyping and discrimination on the basis of age, which is what ageism is. We are being ageist anytime we make an assumption about what someone is capable of or interested in based on how old we think they are, rather than, talking to the person and seeing what they're like and what they're capable of. And so I sort of got fired up because I realized that so many of us, I lost my way for a long time. I knew I was onto something. I knew ageism was at the core of it. And I said to myself, gee, if all you get out of this is that you feel so much better about your own late life, that is a lot, and it may have to be enough. And so I can say that, honestly, you tell me, but no one is going to read my book without feeling a lot better, simply because of all the science in there about how it's not that our fears aren't real. I'm not a Pollyanna. It's that they are so out of proportion to the reality, and that fear itself is bad for us. We know now more and more data about how attitudes towards aging affect how our minds and bodies function at the cellular level. So that anxiety, that needless anxiety, affects our brain function and the way our bodies function. But also the fear is bad for us. It segregates us. It reinforces age segregation, which is terrible. And it also makes us spend money on stuff we don't need and that a lot of people can't afford. So it also reinforces, inequality in that sense. So I sort of got fired up about why this was so bad for us individually and bad for us collectively, especially in a world where people are living far longer than ever before in human history. We need to learn how to make the most of those longer lives instead of sticking our heads, in like an ostrich in the sand and going, oh, I'm never going to get old. I don't want to think about it.
I don't know about you, but I stick my head in the sand all the time. We did have a great conversation about how I continuously was telling Ashton that I was giving her examples about my life. And I was saying, oh, it made me feel younger, or it made me feel this way or that way. And she was quick to correct me on the fact that no one can ever feel younger. They can feel more attractive. They can feel healthier, but they can't feel younger because no one ever will get younger. This was a wake-up call for me because I think that we all have a habit of saying that.
I think it's really important for people to know this stuff. And because, I think it's important individually and collectively. And so I feel like it's important and it is good news in part simply because our fears are so huge. So, perhaps it shouldn't be such good news. It's that we should be less afraid. I mean, I can't say there are not things about being 90 that I'm not afraid of. What the thing is that most of us don't think about the role that the culture in which we live plays in making those fears greater, right? So that we will be, so that we'll spend money. If we can be persuaded that wrinkles are a huge problem, we can spend, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on, anti-aging creams that do not work. The only wrinkle prevention thing that works is sunscreen, for example, or, this, and all prejudice operates to segregate us, to pit us against each other. The classic example being, black factory workers against white factory workers instead of organizing for a fairer wage for all. Stay-at-home moms arguing with mothers in the paid workforce about who's a better mom instead of joining forces to close the wage gap so that women could choose whether or not to stay home. Old versus young, very much a women's issue, because the way it is now, we're all competing to look young. Wrong metric, Right. And let me say, of course, there are a million takes on this subject because we each age in our own way, at our own rate, in our own speed. No judgment, I swear, about people who don't want to say how old they are, who dye their hair to cover the gray, and don't like doing it. We all do what we need to do to make our peace with this, and it changes over time. It is a lifelong process. But I think if we see the social forces that want us to be afraid or want us to think that the natural transitions of aging are pathological, we spend money that we don't need. We are afraid. The fear is bad for us, and we don't get together and compare notes, which is the one, huge advantage that older women have, and women have lifelong. We talk, we compare notes. And by the way, the most important component of a good old age is not how healthy you are. It's not how wealthy you are. It is how strong your social network is. And I would urge every person on this who's listening to this to look at your social circle. Does it include people of all ages? Mm-hmm. Because there are two inevitable bad things about aging, only two. Some part of your body is going to fall apart. Not all of it, but there is physical decline. Cognitive decline is not inevitable, but some aspect, some physical decline is, and people you've known all your life are going to die. So I really want people to, find something you like to do, think of something you like to do, and find a mixed age group to do it with and build out your social network. The other thing that does is it makes it much harder to be ageist. If you have friends, it's harder to be racist if your friends don't have the same skin color as you, right? Or homophobic if you have gay friends and straight friends. It's intuitively obvious. So mix it up age-wise too, because we live in an absurdly age-segregated society. We have this habit of using young to mean insert good thing and bad, old to mean bad thing. What you're really saying is it makes you feel attractive. It makes you feel energetic. Right. So try to use those words rather than feel young, because we can't feel or be any older or younger than we are. One of the hardest questions I get is like, what do I tell people my age? There are people who just won't. I like it when people say how old they are, because the assumption is if you don't want to say how old you are, it's because you wish to be taken for younger. But on the other hand, I think it's important to push back against the notion that that number says much of anything about you. So say what I'll tell you, sure, I'll say how old I am, but I want to know why you want the number. I mean, I also got a great answer while I was on my book tour this spring. Someone said, when someone asks how old you are, say, I was born in 1952, as I was. And then the person blanks because if you're like me, you can't do the math. So, I mean, if you happen to be born like on a year that ends in 2, but in general, they don't do the math instantly. You have answered the question honestly, so you haven't dodged it. And that person is forced to think about how long you've been around and how much you've seen without the ageist connotations of, oh, she's X years old, therefore she must be, stuck in the past or, whatever. So that's a good strategy.
One of the things that Ashton talks about in her book is the bull looks different. So I wanted her to explain to you what that meant, because for me, it was the thing that really grabbed me throughout the book.
I went on a journalism fellowship to Johns Hopkins, and we went to a group of journalists, and a bioethicist there said that his mantra was a Mexican saying that the appearance of the bull changes when you enter the ring. It looks different to the matador, and which I shortened to the bull looks different. And the context in which he uses it and I use it is that he was using it in the context of end of life decisions. We may think we know what we want, but we don't know what it's like till we're there. Psychologists use it. They call it the psychologist fallacy. You can never know what another person is thinking. In an ageist and ableist world that exalts physical perfection, right, and cognitive, speed, we tend, all of us, no judgment, we all do these things. We tend to grossly underestimate the quality of life of someone who moves slowly, who thinks slowly, whose body or brain doesn't function as well as it did when they were young. We assume that their quality of life must be awful. We assume even that their life might not be worth living. From the inside, the experience is different. The bull looks different. We cannot know what that person is experiencing or what we want until we actually listen to them and find out, and try hard not to let these preconceptions and prejudices, which we all possess, to color our view. I used to, when I would see the little old lady hobbling across the street, I would say, or someone debilitated in a hospital bed, put me out of my misery if I get like that. Yeah. And I still don't know what I will want if I end up in that bed, but I now know enough not to assume that person's quality of life is not worth living, or that they necessarily want X or Y. We don't know till we get there.
Okay, so I need to set this next segment up for you, because you got to remember, we're on Facebook Live. Ashton and I are having a live conversation. You're not hearing a lot of that, but someone chimes in and basically says that the person who has ageist.com should be watching the show. And Ashton obviously has got her own point of view regarding ageist.com. Not to take anything away from them and not to give too much to Ashton, my point of view is equal when it comes to both of their points of view. So here's what Ashton had to say.
I mean, Ageist publishes these beautiful portraits of older people who are out in the world in all kinds of ambitious ways. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Which is wonderful. They're really good portraits, and we do need portraits of people who are engaged in the world as an antidote to the narrative that once you're past 40 or 50 or 60, you should either disappear or you become too incompetent to achieve anything in the world. Here's the problem. That scenario is only available to the lucky and the wealthy. That these people are outliers. They're admirable. They're blazing really interesting trails. They are showing the world all the amazing things that people can continue to achieve in late life. But if some of us cannot do that or do not aspire to that, there is nothing wrong with that. I say you are aging successfully if you wake up in the morning. To deny that you are as old as you are, that feeds that comes from denial and self-loathing. That is really at the ugly heart of this, that who you are as the age you are is less worthy, less interesting than who you are. Well, you are that age. You are not less worthy. Don't buy that. It's the same thing. We see it around body acceptance. Oh, you're fat. Well, you're less. You're not as acceptable. You're not as beautiful. That's not who you are. We need to beat back all those messages that judge us for our external appearances. They're rooted in self-loathing. They come from the same place, a society that wants us to feel insecure and inferior and spend money on stuff we don't want. And, we all know this. I don't need to finish this sentence. I'm sure every person listening can finish it. We need to accept ourselves for who we are and take that out in the world. And that is, of course, the ultimate aphrodisiac, the ultimate, power play, is to say, look, I am who I am. I accept it. And this is who I'm going to go out in the world as.
Well, that wraps up another episode of The Wendi Cooper Show, Speaking of Age, Conversations with Remarkable People Over 50. I do hope you enjoyed the show, and I do hope you will share it with others. Make sure to check out Ashton's book. It is available on Amazon. It's available on Kindle, Audible, you name it, you can get it. ThisChairRocks.com. You can also go to yoisthisageist.com and ask questions if you think something is ageist, and Ashton will answer you. So until next time, and until you listen to another episode, stay well, be happy, and remember, don't think about your age. It's not relevant to anything that you're doing in your life right now. So stay happy, and thanks for listening.